Chapter 431. Rank a wrestling ring. There were 3 other places like this wrestling city in the ancient desolate land. They were on the other 3 main islands of the other groups. Strange, there are more than a dozen cities on Longyang Island. Why is everyone heading to the wrestling city? Xiao Chen could not understand when he saw so many cultivators heading for that particular city. I really don't understand. Wrestling City had not organized rank-a matches on such a large scale for 10 years. Hehe, it does not matter. Rank-a duels are a great opportunity to earn money. If we can win 10 matches in a row, we will earn 5,000 medial grade spirit stones. If we win 20 in a row, they will give us an inferior grade secret treasure. I heard that the rewards have increased this time. I wonder if that is true. If it is, that will be a large sum. A cultivator who passed Xiao Chen chatted excitedly. From what they said, he figured out why they were going to Wrestling City. Xiao Chen's expression became sullen. He looked to the sky, at the cultivators rushing to Wrestling City. He muttered to himself, the news has traveled very fast. It looks like, in the first round, there will be many famous cultivators from the ancient desolate lands. The full moon hung high in the sky, and stars flickered. The bright moonlight outshone the light of the stars, making them hard to see. Within Wrestling City, in a residence, the 4 people in charge from the Heavenly Extermination Union led the 200-odd geniuses, hosting a banquet in their honor. Starting tomorrow, this group of cultivators would begin a cruel selection, fighting high-intensity battles for 6 days. Hence, the organizer had decided that, before this happened, they would host a banquet to help them relax. At the same time, they would make use of this opportunity to answer some of the cultivators' questions. Within the hall, Old Li sat in the middle. Next to him were his 3 assistants. A long table sat before the 4. Long tables had also been placed along the 2 walls on each side. Wine and food filled the tables. Behind each table, there were 3 or 4 cultivators. Everyone chatted with each other and relaxed. The atmosphere was lively. Senior Li, I heard that, in the next 5-nation youth competition, the people ranked highly in the Tianwu rankings will have a chance to go to the upper realm. From the right side, a young cultivator set his wine cup down and looked respectfully at Old Li as he inquired. The moment he spoke, the hall immediately fell silent. Everyone focused their gazes on Old Li. The so-called upper realm seemed to be a mysterious place to everyone. Rumors stated that the 3 holy lands were similar realms. No one knew what kind of place that realm was. According to rumors, on the Tianwu continent, only a martial emperor was strong enough to break through the void and witness the upper realm. Without reaching the martial emperor realm, if one wanted to see it, they would only encounter an opportunity from events like the 5-nation youth competition. Of course, not every 5-nation youth competition would offer such an opportunity. Only when the era flourished with geniuses would they gain the interest of the upper realm, resulting in such an opportunity. However, in the past several thousand years, there were no stories of someone qualifying to enter the upper realm during the 5-nation youth competition. Only those in the first 5-nation youth competition during the Thunder Emperor's era had an opportunity to reach the upper realm presented itself. However, 4,000 years was a long time. Most stories from that time had become legends. Now, the young cultivators could only guess what had happened and could not verify the authenticity of such things. However, there were some clues hidden within the upcoming round of the 5-nation youth competition. Not only would the various nations and powers of the Tianwu continent send people, but the powers in the shallow seas of the boundless sea would also send participants. If there were no chances to enter the upper realm, such things would not happen. When Old Li heard the question, he smiled gently, I know about this matter. The older generation supreme elders in the sects behind you know as well. Since they have not told you, naturally, I will say nothing. Why? Confusion swept through the crowd as they asked. Old Li shook his head and said, "It is not time yet. This is currently the budding period of this era of geniuses. Your generation has not matured yet. Telling you now will only harm you and have no benefits. I can only advise you to advance with all your might. The fortunate ones will certainly be in for a big surprise." Towards the back on the right side, Jin Wuji and Ding Fengqiu sat behind a table. Jin Wuji felt somewhat suspicious as he said, "That is strength. Why are his words the same as Master's? First senior brother, you are the apple of Master's eye. Do you have any inside news?" Ding Fengqiu took a sip of wine, and a deep look flashed in his eyes. It was very mysterious. Ding Fengqiu set his wine cup aside and shook his head. He said, "I am not sure either. Don't overthink this. If your strength or talent is not sufficient, reaching that realm will not benefit you." The banquet continued. In the meantime, someone asked about the detailed rules of the rank A wrestling rings. Old Li answered all of the questions without hiding anything. When we reach the wrestling rings, this old man will no longer be in charge. Let me tell all of you this first. If there is any danger, please pull out and do not force yourself. As for the rules, they will use the standard rules of the wrestling ring. You do not have any special privileges. You just have to think of how to obtain 60 victories. Dong. 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 Just at this moment, urgent footsteps came rushing over. An attendant outside the hall held an engraved card and quickly walked over to Old, whispering something in his ear. Old Li's expression changed slightly. He instructed, "Go down and bring him to me. Let me see for myself." The assistants at the side were astonished when they saw the engraved card. They said, "That is Elder Wang's engraved card. Who is he recommending?" Old Li put the engraved card away, and a sullen look crossed his face. He said indifferently, "It's that brat we debated so heavily on. I want to see why this old Huang has vouched for this insignificant inferior grade martial king repeatedly." When the outstanding talents in the hall saw Old Li's expression, they could not figure out what was happening. However, they sensed that something big was about to happen. The atmosphere immediately became very strange. The hall became extremely quiet. Everyone's gazes fixed on the entrance of the hall. They wanted to see who had offended Old Li. Mu Shinya whispered to Zhang Zimo, "Do you think the person you spoke of is here?" Zhang Zimo whispered back, "It's hard to say. However, if it is really him, I cannot do much. This Elder Li is not from our Myriad Fiend Palace's faction." Ta. Ta. Soft footsteps came from outside the doors. Xiao Chen, who wore blue robes, stepped into the hall with the lunar shadow saber in his hand. Xiao Chen swept the hall with his eyes, scanning everybody's faces. He saw a few that were familiar. There was Xia Xian who he had once fought with, Zhang Zimo who he had once met, and the girl with silver hair beside Zhang Zimo seemed familiar, but Xiao Chen could not recall where he had seen her. His two friends, Jin Wuji and Ding Fengqiu, were also here. When he felt Jin Wuji's malicious gaze, he ignored the cultivator. The atmosphere in the hall seemed odd, but Xiao Chen did not think much about it. He looked up to Old Li in front and cupped his hands in respect. Junior Xiao Chen greets senior. Old Li ignored Xiao Chen's words and said unhurriedly, "Personally, I have always thought that cultivation realm was the foundation of a cultivator. Back then, I had suggested the requirement of medial grade martial king. I want to know, what is an inferior grade martial king like you doing here? Seeking death?" Xiao Chen's face sank, and he remembered the words of the old man from the Heavenly Extermination Union. It seemed like he was not very lucky. The old man before him was a member of the faction against him qualifying for the ancient desolate tower. "Go back to where you came from. Entering the wrestling ring requires you to sign a life and death contract. Come back when you are a medial grade martial king. It will be too unfortunate if you fall here at such a young age. Don't think that, after becoming famous in the Great Qin Nation, you have outstanding talent and can ignore the rules. The Great Qin Nation is the weakest amongst the 5 great nations. When the people below heard old Li's words, playful expressions appeared on their faces. It turned out that this person had used his connections to enter, trying to compete with them for spots. Unfortunate, his backer did not seem to have any power here. Not only did Elder Li not allow it, but he also humiliated him. An intelligent young cultivator in the crowd saw that Elder Li did not like Xiao Chen. He immediately picked up from where Elder Li left off and mocked, "An inferior grade martial king wants to fight for spots to the ancient desolate tower against us. You overestimate yourself." The others instantly chimed in, "Indeed, go home. If you die in the wrestling ring, there will be nothing left for you. This is not the Great Qin Nation. You may be a genius there, but you are nothing here." Xiao Chen maintained a calm expression. He would not respond to the surrounding people's words, but he did commit them to memory. He looked directly at old Li and said, "Cultivation realm is indeed the foundation of a cultivator. However, combat experience, marital technique, and cultivation techniques are equally important. In fact, they might even be more important." Old Li snorted coldly and said, "You think you are qualified to speak to me? I do not need you to teach me what is important." Scram. Zhang Zimo could not bear to continue watching. He said, "Senior Li, as far as I know, Elder Huang has an engraved card. He is within his rights to recommend someone." Old Li seemed to fear Zhang Zimo's identity somewhat, so he gave no rebuttal. Zhang Zimo's words were also correct. However, back then, he was the one who suggested setting medial grade martial king as the requirement. He had also done his best to prevent an invitation from being sent to Xiao Chen. If he agreed to let Xiao Chen participate, he would feel very uncomfortable in his heart. If old Li could persuade Xiao Chen to leave, he could claim that Xiao Chen left of his own accord. Elder Huang could do nothing to him. However, given the situation, Xiao Chen was very patient, and Zhang Zimo had spoken up for him. It was no longer possible to chase Xiao Chen away. Old Li's gaze focused on Xiao Chen. Suddenly, a countermeasure came to him. He smiled gently and said, "Very well, I will give you a chance. Since you say that combat experience and cultivation techniques are more important than cultivation realm, choose a cultivator in his hall. If you can obtain a victory in 10 moves, I will give you this chance. Let's show everyone how exquisite your combat techniques are." The hall fell silent. When they looked at Xiao Chen, they took joy in his misfortune. Clearly, this person had offended old Li. It was impossible for Xiao Chen to defeat any of them in 10 moves. The weakest cultivator here was a peak medial grade martial king. Everyone present was a genius of a great sect. They would lack high-ranked martial techniques. Regarding combat experience, they did not think they were inferior to Xiao Chen. Jin Wuji said happily, "This brat finally has his day. The anger in my heart has soothed a little by the ancient desolate pass elder humiliating him." A girl beside Xia Xian whispered, "Senior sister, who is this person? Why is an inferior grade martial king here to join the excitement?" Xia Yiyan's expression had not fluctuated much. She said, "Xiao Ru, don't think this way. He is not an ordinary inferior grade martial king." A slight trace of killing intent flashed in Xiao Chen's calm gaze. He looked at old Li and said, "Might I ask for senior's great name?" Old Li said indifferently, "This old man is Li Xiuju. If you are afraid, you should leave. If you stay, that means you agree to my request." Li Xiuju, Li Xiuju. Xiao Chen memorized this name firmly in his heart. He swore that he would pay back this humiliation 100-fold in the future. Xiao Chen's expression did not change as he said, "As you wish. I hope you will not regret your decision." Lu Xiuju smiled coldly and said, "I will feel regret. This old man has seen many geniuses. I have seen many ignorant fools like yourself. Even if I give you 10 years, you will never be a threat to me." Bang! Li Xiuju slammed his hand down on the table. He snorted coldly and said, "Anyone who defeats him will immediately pass the first round." The moment Li Xiuju spoke, the hall erupted into chaos. Many people headed for Xiao Chen, trying to arrive first. By being able to skip the first round, they could save a lot of their strength. Furthermore, they could glimpse the trump cards of others without revealing their own. There were many benefits. They would have a massive advantage in the second round. No one would mind this opportunity. Shoo. However, one person rushed ahead of the others. It was the Heavenly Sword Gate's Jin Wuji. His gaze had always fixed on Xiao Chen. The moment Li Xiuji spoke, Jin Wuji's figure flashed forward, immediately appearing across from Xiao Chen. Ding Fengchu's hand hovered in the air. He had tried to hold back Jin Wuji. Unexpectedly, Jin Wuji exploded forth in an instant, not even allowing him the chance to react. So, he withdrew his hand. I cannot even stop him. How stupid. Never mind, since you want to offer yourself up as a stepping stone, go ahead. Ding Fengqiu downed his wine in one gulp, shaking his head as he mumbled to himself. However, this was a good opportunity to see how much Xiao Chen had grown. Jin Wuji emitted killing qi from his body relentlessly. He laughed maniacally and said, "Xiao Chen, you did not expect that you would end up like this today. Back then, when you sneak attacked and trampled on me, you had not expected that I would personally crush your hopes one day." Jin Wuji laughed happily. Back when Xiao Chen had trampled on him, he could not even retaliate. It had been a nightmare for him. After that, when he cultivated, the image of Xiao Chen always appeared in his mind, causing him to fail. Jin Wuji knew this was a heart demon. Xiao Chen had become his heart demon. If he did not resolve this, the heart demon would always exist. His strength would halt and possibly regress. Today, all Jin Wuji had to do was last 10 moves, and he could end Xiao Chen's hopes of entering the ancient desolate tower. This was undoubtedly a good chance for him to get rid of his heart demon. This was definitely worth rejoicing. Jin Wuji drew his sword and smiled. He had a sinister expression as he said, "White-robed bladesman, today, I will make you realize that, without a sneak attack, you would have no chance against me." Xiao Chen flipped his hand, and the lunar shadow saber appeared in his right hand. He said indifferently, "What a joke. You really think that you lost only because it was a sneak attack?" Seeing Xiao Chen take out the lunar shadow saber from the universe ring, Mu Xinya's expressions fluctuated. She muttered, "It's really him. Song Ke was unable to kill him with that palm strike that day." Ever since Xiao Chen had stepped into the hall, Mu Xinya's gaze had never left the cultivator. He had felt similar to that person in her memories. He was calm, decisive, unhurried, had an expression that would not change in any situation, and unyielding regardless of the situation. When Xiao Chen took out the lunar shadow saber, the saber that Mu Xinya remembered, she finally verified Xiao Chen's identity. "Senior sister, do you think this Xiao Chen can win?" Xia Xian's junior sister asked. Xia Xian felt uncertain as she responded, "It's hard to say. His overall power is definitely stronger than Jin Wuji's. However, it is too difficult for him to defeat Jin Wuji in 10 moves. Even I have no confidence in doing so." Most of the cultivators present had similar views. They thought that Jin Wuji would gain a great benefit, skipping the first round entirely. Li Xiuju had a faint smile as he watched from above. His only expectation of Xiao Chen was failure. Such an ignorant cultivator would not climb very high in the future. Kai. Within the hall, a resonant sword hum echoed suddenly. Jin Wuji could no longer resist and made the first move. Jin Wuji pointed his sword at Xiao Chen as it trembled. The air rippled like water. The sharp state of metal spread out from the edge of the sword. Before the sword moved, wind had already arrived. An extremely sharp sword intent headed for Xiao Chen. It tore through the air and struck Xiao Chen's forehead. It clearly intended to disturb Xiao Chen's state of mind and break him. The state of metal only had one attribute, an extremely pure sharpness. Given Jin Wuji's aura, he had comprehended his state of metal to great perfection. He has no more chances. Jin Wuji's state of metal has reached great perfection. Although it has not reached consummation yet, it would be impossible to defeat him in 10 moves, Sha Xian sighed. The others watching also shook their head. From the very start, this fight had not been fair. Now, Xiao Chen had no chance at all. Li Xiuju's frown faded, and he relaxed completely. He smiled as he muttered, "The result is clear already." When Xiao Chen felt that sharp sword intent, with a thought, he used a qi that he had never used before. Since the time Xiao Chen had condensed his martial spirit, he had experienced failure, torment, confusion, worry, and all sorts of twists and turns. However, he never lost that sharpness within him. That was the qi that belonged to a bladesman. Dang! A metallic clanging sound resounded in the air like blades clashing. The sword intent Jin Wuji had sent out had been blocked instantly. The state of metal in the sword intent vanished. Saber intent. A few people in the crowd wondered doubtfully when they heard the melodious ring and felt the qi from Xiao Chen. Saber had evolved from swords. Hence, saber intent was derived from sword intent. However, it was harder to form than sword intent. If one were to assign a probability to it, the odds of successfully comprehending sword intent were 1 in 100,000. However, for saber intent, it was 1 in a million. Furthermore, in the past 1,000 years, there were no stories of anyone comprehending saber intent under the age of 30. Even the 10 great bladesmen of the ancient desolate land had only comprehended saber intent after they reached 40. Such outstanding bladesmen only existed in the generation of the Thunder Emperor. If they wanted to search for other examples, they would have to look back to the Tianwu dynasty or the ancient era. Ding Fengchu's expression relaxed slightly. He said, "Fortunately, it is not saber intent. It is merely some qi. However, if some qi can block Jin Wuji's sword intent, how powerful would a completely formed saber intent be?" The other people in the hall heaved a sigh of relief as well. If it were truly saber intent, that would be too shocking. Jin Wuji is not weak. If I have to fight him under normal circumstances, we will have to exchange at least 100 moves. If I want to defeat him in 10 moves, I have to catch him off guard and attack with a spurt of energy, allowing him no time to react. Fortunately, I have a saber technique that can attack with a great spurt of energy, the rushing thunder chop. Although it is not highly ranked, I can make up for the difference with my essence and states. It is more than sufficient to deal with Jin Wuji. After smashing Jin Wuji's sword intent, Xiao Chen took advantage of the moment his opponent was caught off guard. He quickly raised his right foot and stomped. Bang! Xiao Chen merged his vital qi and essence into this stomp. He held nothing back and sent out 350,000 kilograms of force. The ground cracked. Boom! 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 The entire hall started to shake. All the wine cups on the wooden tables shattered. The crack in the ground quickly extended towards Jin Wuji. As the ground cracked, a sharp shockwave shot upwards for half a meter. As the crack in the ground extended, it sped towards Jin Wuji like a sharp knife intending to split him in half. Jin Wuji's expression became one of shock. He had not expected Xiao Chen to make such a move. This was the so-called catching Jin Wuji off guard. Jin Wuji's body swayed as the ground shook. When he saw the shockwaves, he quickly dodged to the side. The shockwave brushed past Jin Wuji and continued for Li Xiuju. Li Xiuju merely stomped on the ground expressionlessly, and the sharp shockwave dissipated. At the same time, the ground also stopped cracking right before the fissure reached Li Xiuju's table. Shoo! Jin Wuji had just stabilized himself but had no time to catch his breath as when he saw Xiao Chen rushing at him with the lunar shadow saber in his right hand. His gaze looked as sharp as an eagle's. Dong! 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 Xiao Chen's footsteps sounded like the roar of thunder. He moved as fast as lightning. A strong wind blew as he dashed forward, forcing Jin Wuji to squint. Jin Wuji had a bad feeling. He pushed off the ground and retreated. You think you can run? It's already too late. Xiao Chen snorted coldly. He placed his hand on the saber hilt and drawing the saber. It seemed like a bolt of lightning had emerged from the scabbard. It was very dazzling, hurting everyone's eyes. In the time for a spark to fly, Jin Wuji's sword spun quickly and guarded his chest, blocking the saber. Dang! Sparks flew when the weapons clashed. As Xiao Chen rushed forward, he raised his momentum to the limits. As for Jin Wuji, after retreating, his momentum harshly fell. Jin Wuji felt his arm go numb, and his sword trembled. He nearly dropped his sword. Arclight chop. Xiao Chen activated the blood flame shoes, and his speed increased again. Soon, he reached Jin Wuji's side. The lunar shadow saber sent an arclight that flickered with relentless electricity. Retreat. The arclight sealed off all possibilities of counterattacking. There were no weaknesses. So, Jin Wuji had to retreat once again. I cannot retreat anymore. If I keep retreating, I will lose all my momentum, Jin Wuji thought anxiously. I have to go on the offensive and control the rhythm again. Jin Wuji swung his sword and prepared his killing move. However, just as he was about to make his move, he saw Xiao Chen rushing at him with his saber. If Jin Wuji did not retreat, Xiao Chen would slash him in the chest. He would cut him in half, and he would die without a corpse. Retreat. How hateful. Jin Wuji was utterly depressed. He dispersed his killing move and retreated once again. Xiao Chen's figure paused in the air, and he watched Jin Wuji retreat below. It looked as if he were frozen. Rushing thunder chop. In the next instant, thunder roared behind Xiao Chen. It shook the dust from the roof as his momentum increased again. Xiao Chen's saber hacked down as it carried the boundless might of thunder. Jin Wuji wore a horrified expression. This saber felt like lightning. There was no opportunity to dodge at all. Xiao Chen's aura locked down on him as though he had predicted where he would land. A sword light flashed. Jin Wuji exhausted his essence without holding back. He quickly sent out multiple solid walls made of swords, trying to block the saber strike. However, Jin Wuji had already exhausted his momentum. No matter how strong the sword walls were, it would be useless against Xiao Chen at his peak momentum. Bang! 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 The sword walls crumbled like dead branches on a tree. The intense shockwaves spread into the surrounding. All the watching cultivators quickly defended themselves. See. The force of the saber entered Jin Wuji's body. He vomited a mouthful of blood and grew very pale. Rushing thunder second chain chop. After Xiao Chen landed, he did not hesitate. The accumulated lightning attributed energy from 4 moves exploded forth in an instant. The saber lit up with a resplendent electric light. Jin Wuji did his best to block, but the saber strike knocked him flying. His clothes were tattered, and blood flowed from his wounds. Jin Wuji lay miserably on the ground. The electric light on his body had yet to scatter, crackling relentlessly. The hall became incredibly quiet. All the cultivators who had mocked Xiao Chen earlier were stunned. Xiao Chen had not even used 10 moves. He only used 5 to defeat Jin Wuji utterly. Even if they counted that first stomp, that was only 6 moves. Bang! Li Xiuju flushed with anger. He smashed his palm on the wooden table and shattered it. When he watched Jin Wuji climb to his feet arduously, his gaze filled with disgust. Trash! You cannot even deal with an inferior grade martial king. How are you qualified to participate in his selection? Scram! Li Xiuju punched the air and struck Jin Wuji heavily. He vomited another large mouthful of blood and was blasted out of the hall. After that, he rolled down the steps before coming to a stop. Li Xiuju glared at Xiao Chen. Then, he stood expressionlessly before leaving the hall without a word. Lu Xiuju left piqued. His 3 assistants followed after him. Naturally, this banquet had ended on an unpleasant note. Within the hall, all of the outstanding talents looked towards Xiao Chen. They no longer dismissed him as before. They now saw him as a strong competitor. They all wore depressed expressions. There was yet another competitor to worry about. Clearly, that was not a good thing. However, there were about 10 people whose eyes lit up with a blazing fighting spirit. They were not afraid of a challenge. The more competitors they had, the more excited they became. Pei Xiaoxuan, what do you think? The Holy Fire Manor's young manor lord, Leng Yun, looked at the beast-taming Abad's Pei Xiaoxuan as he asked indifferently. Pei Xiaoxuan played with the scarlet ring he wore on his index finger. He said softly, "He is very strong. However, there is no need to be astonished. If you can catch Jin Wuji off guard as well, you can also defeat him within 10 moves." Leng Yun nodded and said, "Naturally, I understand this principle. Unfortunately, it is hard to seize the initiative against someone whose cultivation realm is higher than yours. This is where he displays his brilliance." Pei Xiaoxuan stood. Before he left, he said, 100 battles all have to be fought with strength. He might be able to catch someone off guard once or twice. However, if he wants to continue fighting, his foundational strength is the most important. I'll see you tomorrow. All of the outstanding talents in the hall discussed the earlier fight before they left. The banquet had ended, there was no reason to remain. Xia Xian led her junior sister over and congratulated Xiao Chen, "Congratulations. It looks like I have another competitor for a spot in the ancient desolate tower." Xiao Chen smiled gently, "Miss Xia, you praise me too much. If I fight against you, my odds of winning are only 50%. My first senior sister had comprehended sword intent at the age of 16. Now, she is a superior grade martial king. Her cultivation technique is a peak earth-ranked cultivation technique, and her martial techniques are peak earth-ranked martial techniques. Within the same generation, she is not inferior to anyone. You overestimate yourself." When Xiao Ru, who stood beside Xia Xian, heard Xiao Chen claim to be about equal to Xia Xian, she felt somewhat dissatisfied. In Xiao Ru's opinion, even though Xiao Chen was strong and managed to defeat Jin Wuji in 6 moves, he mostly relied on tricks. If it were not for that stomp delaying Jin Wuji and forcing him back over and over again, there was no way Xiao Chen could defeat Jin Wuji within 10 moves. Xiao Ru had not considered Xiao Chen's tactics as a form of strength. Xiao Chen looked at Xiao Ru but was not angry. He could tell that she only defended first senior sister like a little girl defending her idol. When Xia Xian heard Xiao Ru's words, she glared at Xiao Ru before saying apologetically, "I'm sorry. This girl always speaks without thinking. Don't mind her." Xiao Chen smiled faintly in response. "I shall take my leave first. I'll see you tomorrow." Seeing that Xiao Ru was about to say something else, Xia Xian pulled her to the side and quickly took her leave. Xiao Chen sheathed his lunar shadow saber. He did not intend to linger and was about to leave. The fight in the wrestling ring tomorrow was the true battle. This was only an appetizer. Brother Xiao, please wait a moment. Just as Xiao Chen reached the doors of the hall, Zhang Zimo stopped him and walked over with Mu Xinya. Although Xiao Chen did not know the cultivator well, Zhang Zimo had helped him once again, displaying intentions of friendship. This was especially so after Zhang Zimo had risked offending Li Xiuju. Compared to those who tried to pander to the old man, such a friend was even more precious. Xiao Chen stopped and turned. Then, he cupped his hand and gave thanks. Thank you, Brother Zimo, for speaking up for me, helping me fight for this chance. Zhang Zimo smiled gently and said, it was just a small matter. I am not afraid of Li Xiuju. He does not dare act against me. Zhang Zimo seemed very confident. It appeared as though a large power supported him, a power that even Li Xiuju feared. Xiao Chen did not continue with the niceties and asked directly, why are you looking for me? If it is something that I can help you with, just say it. I shall remember that. For now, there is nothing, Zhang Zimo said with a smile before pointing to the silver-haired girl beside him. He said, she is the one looking for you. I shall take my leave first. After Zhang Zimo left, Xiao Chen suspiciously examined the silver-haired girl before him. Although she seemed familiar, he could not recall seeing her before. Have we met before? Xiao Chen probed. Mu Xinya looked at Xiao Chen. A bitter smile appeared on her exquisite face. Tell me this, will you kill me again? Xiao Chen felt astonished. When he heard Mu Xinya's voice, he finally recalled who this silver-haired girl was. Back in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, for the sake of rescuing the Heavenly Wolf King, she had pretended to be the human girl, Mu Xinya. They had spent more than a month together. No wonder the moment I entered the hall, this girl's gaze had never left me. She must have recognized me. Xiao Chen recalled the previous events clearly. The expressions of those miners begging him appeared in his mind. However, Xiao Chen had a different view of the matters of the past. Those miners were people the Heavenly Saber Pavilion sacrificed on purpose. It was hard to differentiate who was in the right or wrong. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts and shook his head, I won't. Let's not mention the past again. Everyone has their own beliefs. It's just the angles which they look from are different. When Mu Xinya heard this, she heaved a sigh of relief. She asked, can we talk? Xiao Chen nodded, and the two flew out. Outside the hall, Jin Wuji's clothes were tattered as he lay miserably on the ground. Occasionally, a light flickered on his body. The bones in Jin Wuji's chest were indented. That was the result of Li Xiuju's punch. As a martial monarch, his punch was far more destructive than Xiao Chen's attacks. Furthermore, when considering the injuries Xiao Chen had caused, without the aid of medicinal pills and half a year to recuperate, it would be difficult to recover to his peak state. To these geniuses, wasting half a year was a cruel matter. It would result in a gap that they could never close. When the passing cultivators saw this, they felt that he was very ill-fated. 15 minutes ago, everyone envied him. As long as he could withstand 10 moves, he would easily clear the first round. However, 15 minutes later, an inferior-grade martial king had defeated him in 6 moves. His reputation had taken a great hit. Then, Li Xiuju had injured him further, destroying his qualifications to participate in the selections. This was such a tragic sight. He had experienced disaster after disaster. The crowd had learned a big lesson, never to underestimate someone with a lower cultivation realm than you in the future. That person might be another Xiao Chen. The miserable Jin Wuji was the best example. Ding Fengqiu slowly walked to Jin Wuji and sighed. Jin Wuji was now a cripple. He had lost the rights to stand amongst the first-rate geniuses forever. This era of geniuses was just budding. This was an age where geniuses came forth in great numbers. This was undoubtedly a tragedy for him. I told you long ago, you should know yourself well. If you do not have sufficient strength, do not use the name of the heavenly sword gate to flaunt your might. You had asked for it. Ding Fengqiu placed his hand on Jin Wuji's chest. He circulated his essence, and the electric light in Jin Wuji's body quickly moved towards Ding Fengqiu's palm. Ding Fengqiu raised his palm, and a ball of lightning-attributed essence floated below his hand. The unconscious Jin Wuji immediately felt more comfortable. Bang! Ding Fengqiu casually tossed the ball of electricity onto the ground. It exploded and created a deep pit, sending dust into the air. What a strong lightning-attributed energy. This person might cultivate a heaven-ranked cultivation technique. Otherwise, he would not have such surging energy as an inferior-grade martial king. Ding Fengqiu frowned slightly and muttered to himself, "This is only the remnant energy. If this were his full power, it would be even stronger." Ding Fengqiu had incredible insight. Even though it was only some remnant energy, he could make a rough estimation of Xiao Chen's strength. Ding Fengqiu, I told you long ago not to bring trash here. Now you have embarrassed yourself. Beast Taming Abad's Pei Xiaoxuan laughed as he walked over. Seeking death. Ding Fengqiu's expression chilled. He used 2 fingers as a sword and pointed them at Pei Xiaoxuan. Shoo! The long sword at Ding Fengqiu's waist hummed and quickly emerged from its sheath. Under Ding Fengqiu's control, it flew towards Pei Xiaoxuan with a surging sword intent. Woo! Woo! The air rang out with sword hums. Water-like ripples spread out from the sword. Space seemed to blur. Pei Xiaoxuan's expression changed. He had not expected Dong Fengqiu to attack. He quickly formed hand seals. Circular formation markings appeared behind Pei Xiaoxuan. A realistic ape with muscles and skin like metal appeared before him and blocked the strike. Bang! The moment the ape appeared, a huge bloody hole appeared on its chest. The sword had pierced through it, and it died on the spot. Hu Kai. Clearly, Pei Xiaoxuan had not expected the attack to destroy the steel ape with strong defenses in an instant. Pei Xiaoxuan quickly did his best to dodge. However, the sword still slashed a wound on his right shoulder. Blood gushed from the wound. Soon, his entire right shoulder was covered in the scarlet liquid. Pei Xiaoxuan, on account of your first senior brother, I will not kill you now. Watch what you say in the future. It is not your turn to disrespect the people of the Heavenly Sword Gate. Ka-ca. Ding Fengqiu waved his hand, and the sword returned to its scabbard. He picked up Jin Wuji's body and did not bother looking at Pei Xiaoxuan before leaving. As Pei Xiaoxuan looked at the other party's face, revealing a hateful glare. His hatred of Ding Fengqiu had begun long ago. During their first encounter, they fought each other over natural treasures. Pei Xiaoxuan received severe injuries, and Ding Fengqiu snatched all of the treasures. He had always viewed it as an extraordinary shame and humiliation. Otherwise, Pei Xiaoxuan would not have eliminated Jin Wuji in such a miserable fashion during the previous 5-nation youth competition. Pei Xiaoxuan withdrew his gaze and stopped the bleeding on his shoulder. He knelt down and pointed at the bleeding steel ape lying into a pool of blood with the finger wearing a scarlet ring. Kai! Kai! The ring flashed red, and it sucked in the steel ape's corpse and blood. Ka-ca! Ka-ca! The ring emitted bone-chilling sounds and looked quite odd. The moon hung high in the sky like a silver plate illuminating the world. Xiao Chen and Mu Xinya sat on a rooftop in the city. Even though Mu Xinya had asked if they could talk, she had done most of the talking. Xiao Chen, more or less, understood what happened after Mu Xinya left the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. After she inherited the Heavenly Wolf King's strength, her strength had rapidly soared. Now, Mu Xinya was a peak superior grade martial king. Most importantly, she would not encounter any bottlenecks. As long as she faithfully continued to absorb the Heavenly Wolf King's strength, her strength would soar, her potential was limitless. When Mu Shinya fought an enemy, she could draw from the Heavenly Wolf King's energy and even challenge a half-step martial monarch. Furthermore, it was not like how Xiao Chen had managed, needing an opportunity to flee. Because of Mu Shinya, the Heavenly Wolf race, which was in a precarious position, had gained a large number of resources from the Myriad Fiend Palace, and the overall strength of her clan had increased. Yi Chen, did you know that the month in that underground world was the most relatively ordinary moment of my life? Mu Shinya looked up at the bright moon as the moonlight illuminated her silver hair, adding a layer of radiance and looking like an illusion. Ha ha, however, I cannot stop. The burden of my clan falls on me alone. There are 20 spots for the ancient desolate tower, and I must obtain one. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, then, I wish you success. Out of the 20 spots, I have to obtain one as well. Mu Shinya smiled embarrassedly, let's work hard together, then. After that, we can work together in the ancient desolate tower once again. The tacit understanding we have might even reach a level no one else has ever reached before. I'm going now. Thank you for accompanying me for so long. I finally can dismiss the worry I have held onto from the time. Mu Shinya waved her hand, and her exquisite figure jumped off of the rooftop and into the distance. Xiao Chen got up and watched the distant Mu Shinya. He sighed gently, there are more than 1,000 peak geniuses. This group alone has people like Ding Fengqiu, Jing Zimo, and Mu Shinya, geniuses amongst geniuses. These 20 spots are going to be difficult to obtain. However, regardless of the situation, Xiao Chen had to obtain one. There were a total of 9 floors in the ancient desolate tower. In the past, the genius Thunder Emperor climbed to the 7th floor before he rose to prominence. In the past years, although there were not many who managed to climb to the 5th floor, without exception, they all had gained great benefits. Some had obtained an increase in their cultivation, some found ancient heaven-ranked martial techniques, or even heaven-ranked cultivation techniques. There were people who were stuck at bottlenecks in the comprehension of various martial techniques. They had made breakthroughs in the tower, massively increasing their combat prowess after they left. None of these stories were exaggerations. Without the ancient desolate tower, the cultivators of the other 4 nations would find it hard to enter the top 50 of the Tianwu rankings. The second day, the sun had just broken through the darkness. The radiance of dawn shone on every corner of Wrestling City. The 200-odd outstanding talents from various places had gathered in the hall of the residence Li Xiuju had led them to. Xiao Chen stood in the corner of the crowd, waiting calmly for Li Xiuju's arrival. This was only the first round of the selection. He believed that he could pass it with his strength. After a long time, Li Xiuju emerged from the back. Aside from his 3 assistants, there was also an unknown cultivator beside him. That person wore tight cultivator robes. Muscles bulged throughout his body. He looked very strong. He seemed to be 40-odd years old and was a half-step martial monarch. A faint scar on his right cheek gave him a fierce and tough appearance. His eyes were dim and without light, giving the same impression as a gloomy forest. Li Xiuju looked for Xiao Chen's figure in the crowd. He smiled coldly before he withdrew his gaze. He said, "Let me introduce this person to everyone. This is the city lord of Wrestling City, Gao Yangyu. We are no longer governing the following matters. After 6 days, I will return to pick up the people who have obtained 60 victories. I will bring those who meet the standard to Desolate City and meet up with the other 3 groups to proceed with the second round of selection. For those who fail, you will have to return home." After Li Xiuju spoke, he departed with his 3 assistants, handing everything over to Gao Yangyu. Gao Yangyu looked at the crowd calmly. Then, with the flip of his hand, he took out stacks of contracts before distribution them to the crowd. Xiao Chen took the contract and examined it. It was a life and death contract. The main contents were, I participate in the rank A wrestling ring willingly, and my life or death is unrelated to Wrestling City. Let me say this first, Wrestling City is not connected to the Heavenly Extermination Union. They do not have any authority over us. In fact, news of you undergoing the first round of selection in the rank A wrestling ring had only reached me 1 week ago. I will not give any of you special privileges. You are all the same as the other cultivators in the rank A wrestling ring. Life and death are in your own hands. If you want to participate in the wrestling ring, you have to sign this contract. Gao Yangyu's statement was calm and firm. Li Xiuju had explained most of this to the crowd already. All of the outstanding talents present had calm expressions. They signed the contract without hesitation. Perhaps people would die in the rank A wrestling ring. However, everyone here was an outstanding talent of their region. They were all very strong. No one believed they would actually die. After signing the life and death contract, Xiao Chen joined the back of the queue and was the last to hand over his contract. Gao Yangyu looked at the name on the life and death contract and could not help but glance at Xiao Chen. A hard-to-trace killing chi flashed in his eyes. Xiao Chen felt this killing chi. His expression did not change as he slowly moved to the back. Xiao Chen had no grievances with Gao Yangyu. Logically, he should not have any murderous intent for Xiao Chen. The only explanation was that Li Xiuju had given him some instructions. This old man really seems to have a problem with me, Xiao Chen thought to himself. I have endured this before and will keep an eye out. After Gao Yangyu collected all the contracts, he smiled faintly, very good. No one backed out. I shall wish you all good luck, then. Gao Yangyu activated the ring on his right hand and space fluctuated intensely. A door of light appeared in the hall. Let's go. Gao Yangyu took the lead and stepped through the doorway of light. No one here was an ordinary cultivator, and they knew that this was the rarely seen transportation gate. There was nothing to make a fuss over. They all followed Gao Yangyu, one after another. Xiao Chen was still the last one to cross the threshold. When he stepped through the doorway of light, he felt a mysterious force pulling him forward. Every sensation vanished. It felt like, for an instant, an eternity had passed before Xiao Chen regained control over his movements. Roar, roar, roar. Just as Xiao Chen regained his footing, earth-shattering roars resounded in his ears. Xiao Chen looked up and discovered that he and the others had appeared in a vast wrestling ring. The circular wrestling ring seemed to be at least 10,000 square meters. Spectator stands surrounded the wrestling ring. There were several 10,000 seats filled to the last. It looked very lively. Gao Yangyu summoned the crowd and pointed in a direction. Later, there will be 1,000 demonic beasts coming out from that cage. There are a total of 200 iron medallions on the beasts' bodies. You have to kill the demonic beasts and obtain an iron medallion before you qualify to compete in the rank A wrestling ring. The crowd looked to where Gao Yangyu pointed. They only saw a dark space behind a metal barrier. Within the darkness were countless scarlet eyes. A strong aura seeped from the dark space, and bestial roars echoed throughout the arena, making one tremble in fear. Damn it! They are all rank 7 demonic beasts. When someone felt the ranks of the demonic beasts, their expression changed. They seemed rather horrified. Gao Yangyu smiled faintly and said, "That's right, they are all rank 7 demonic beasts. Furthermore, they are extremely hungry rank 7 demonic beasts." A rank 7 demonic beast was not very scary. Everyone here could deal with one easily. However, even if they split 1,000 rank 7 evenly amongst themselves, each cultivator would have to fight 4 rank 7 demonic beasts. Furthermore, Snatching the iron medallions would also serve as a distraction. The danger was extraordinary. Xia Xian's expression turned grave. She whispered to Xiao Ru, "Don't get separated, stick close to me." Although Xiao Ru was strong, she had no experience. This time, as she participated in the selection, the Thousand Sword Pavilion had other intentions for her. They wanted to use this as experiential training. At the same time, they wanted to see if she would be lucky enough to earn a spot in the ancient desolate tower. However, no one expected there to be so much danger at the very start of the selection. The other people present began to look for partners. Under such circumstances, being alone was very risky. Zhang Zimo and Mu Xinya extended an invitation to Xiao Chen, but he shook his head in rejection. Xiao Chen knew that the other party had kind intentions. However, he had the advantage of speed and was not afraid of such situations. There was no need to owe Zhang Zimo another favor over this. Yao Yangyu was very pleased with the atmosphere. After he silenced everyone, he said, "After you obtain the iron medallion, anyone here can challenge you, as long as their cultivation is lower than half-step martial monarch. You must defeat them and obtain 60 victories. Open the barriers." Without giving the crowd too much time to react, Yao Yangyu leapt out of the wrestling ring and waved his hands. The meal barrier holding the 1000 rank 7 demonic beasts immediately opened. Thunderous footsteps resounded as all of the demonic beasts rushed out. The demonic beasts salivated as their eyes gleamed scarlet, and they launched themselves into the crowd. There were all sorts of demonic beasts. Some crawled on the ground, and some flew in the air. Some were wind attributed, some were fire attributed, and some were ice attributed. There were all sorts of demonic beasts. Suddenly, they all rushed at the crowd. A black chi rushed into the sky, covering it. Their aura was frightening. The crowd did not hesitate at all. They urgently retreated. At this point, no one dared test might of the horde of demonic beasts. When the extremely hungry demonic beasts caught a whiff of the human's aura, they grew even more ferocious. No one would be foolish enough to test them now. Retreat. Everyone executed their movement techniques and moved quickly to the back, scattering. Boom. 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 However, there were simply too many demonic beasts. The wrestling ring was only large enough to hold the demonic beasts without giving them too much space. Soon, cultivators and demonic beasts began to fight. 4 beasts surrounded Xiao Chen. There was one several meters long scarlet metallic snake as thick as an elephant's leg with metallic scales, 2 flame wolves covered in black chi and walking on their hind legs, and an extremely ferocious lightning ox. Hu Kai. The scarlet metallic snake moved very fast, taking the initiative to attack. It opened its huge jaws and shot towards Xiao Chen, trying to swallow him whole. Shoo. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and activated the blood flame shoes. His speed instantly reached Mach 3.5 as he moved in an arc. Xiao Chen's figure flashed, and he landed on the scarlet metallic snake's head, stomping hard when he did. Dang! Dang! When the huge force struck the scarlet metallic snake's head, it gave off a loud, metallic ring. He had kicked its upper body into the ground. Rumble. A deep pit appeared in the ground. Cracks extended from it into the surroundings. Xiao Chen hovered in the air. His soul felt somewhat numb. He sensed that the scarlet metallic snake had not received any fatal damage. The rank 7 scarlet metallic snake specialized in defense. Its scales were as hard as superior-grade frost iron. Weapons could not penetrate it, and it was difficult to deal with. Kai. A purple bolt of lightning flew towards Xiao Chen. The lightning ox had attacked as well. The 2 flame wolves, covered in black flames, rushed over alongside the bolt of lightning. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and pulled his palm in. The purple lighting transformed into a whirlpool that spun on his palm, becoming a ball of purple flames. Without the protection of states, Xiao Chen could collect as much lightning-attributed energy as he wanted. Xiao Chen leapt into the air, moving back instead of forward. Then, he punched the two flame wolves. The purple flames on his hand slowly spread and encased the two flame wolves. The demonic beasts were very intelligent. The two flame wolves had planned to take advantage of the moment Xiao Chen blocked the lightning, attacking. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen was not afraid of the lightning. He pulled it in with the flip of the palm. The attack, which the two demonic beasts stored power for, would forever remain at this stage. Boom. The purple and black flames clashed relentlessly on the flame wolves. They exploded with intense heat, and the flame wolves were knocked to the ground. After tumbling across the ground for a while, the flame wolves crawled to their feet miserably. Their fur was burnt to a crisp, emitting black smoke. Roar! Roar! When the lightning ox saw that the lightning it was so proud of had not damaged Xiao Chen, it angrily pressed forward with its colossal body. The bodies of demonic beasts were, for the most part, stronger than cultivators. When clashing using their physical bodies, humans usually suffered a disadvantage. This was a move that many demonic beasts liked to use. If they used it well, they could even cause the cultivator internal injuries. Unfortunately, the lightning ox faced Xiao Chen. He clenched his fist, and the image of a tiger and dragon spiraled around his arm, roaring ferociously. Crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Xiao Chen shouted and crossed his arms, receiving the lightning ox's mad charge head-on. Bang! A loud crash resounded, but Xiao Chen did not move. The lightning ox bounced back at the same speed it crashed into Xiao Chen with. Dragon hisses, tiger roars. Xiao Chen leapt up. When he landed next to the lightning ox, he punched it with the power stored by the crouching tiger, hidden dragon. Roar! 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 As Xiao Chen punched, the roars of the tiger and dragon rang out. The sound was ear-splitting. Intense explosions echoed within the lightning ox's body. Hu Kai! Hu Kai! The lightning ox struggled as its entire body exploded with electricity. A purple light radiated as boundless electric sparks jumped across its body. When the electric light surged, Xiao Chen's hair and clothes fluttered. There even seemed to be some arcs of electricity jumping between them. Xiao Chen felt no fear. He punched the lightning ox with his right fist. As the tiger and dragon roared, he continued pummeling it. The purple thunder divine incantation circulated rapidly, and he constantly absorbed the electric light with his left hand. The electricity became a whirlpool, spinning rapidly. After a while, Xiao Chen's fist had shattered all of the lightning ox's internal organs. The electric light finally faded. The scarlet metallic snake and the flame wolves took advantage of this opportunity to launch themselves at Xiao Chen. The three demonic beasts used their best moves. The scarlet metallic snake's long tail slammed down with a huge force. The two flame wolves' paws lit up with black flames, leaving a black comet tail as they swung their paws. Xiao Chen turned around and looked at the fierce purple flames in his palm. Suddenly a thought occurred to him. Can I use this purple flames to cast the life bestowal spell? In theory, the life bestowal spell can use anything as a focus. When it is at great perfection, it can even use the air. Since Xiao Chen thought of it, there was no problem trying it out. He used his spiritual sense to split a strand of purple flame and quickly molded it into an electric flame eagle. Hu Kai! Xiao Chen's right hand made hand seals as he continued to exhaust the mental energy in his sea of consciousness and the essence in the Qi whirlpool. Using energy to cast the life bestowal spell resulted in double the exhaustion. It was due to essence and mental energy merging. Life bestowal spell. Xiao Chen shouted, and the electric flame eagle instantly came to life. When it spread its wingspan reached 10 meters. The eagle crashed towards the descending snake tail. There was a shattering sound. The harder-than-frost iron scales had shattered. The entire snake tail broke off. It really is possible. Furthermore, its might is so impressive. Xiao Chen revealed a happy expression. In the spectator stands, when Gao Yangyu saw this, his expression changed. This move seems to merge mental energy and essence. How did this brat do it? The mental energy of martial kings could not bear the berserk nature of essence. This was something that only martial monarchs and above could grasp. Even a half-step martial monarch like himself had only a small grasp on it. The lightning ox was dead, and the scarlet metallic snake was severely injured. Xiao Chen only had to deal with the two flame wolves. Victory was almost guaranteed. If Xiao Chen were not unlucky, there would be one iron medallion within each of the demonic beasts. However, Xiao Chen's performance was not the most impressive, but someone else's. The many cultivators in the spectator stands focused on the battle below. They observed and tried to figure out who to pick as their opponents. Wrestling City had been in operation for hundreds of years. It became a chain business long ago. Not only could the challenging cultivators win fantastic prizes, but the ordinary spectators could also place bets and earn something that way. Wrestling City was no more than 5 kilometers away from the main city, Longyang City. Several 10,000 cultivators would come and watch the matches every day. The number of people currently in the stands had reached at least 100,000. Almost everyone would place a bet. Even if everyone only gambled a few hundred medial-grade spirit stones, it would generate a betting pool of several 100 million medial-grade spirit stones. That was an extremely large sum. Since they could earn some extra spirit stones and watch powerful fighting techniques in the match, Wrestling City had a great alert to cultivators. Suddenly, someone in the spectator stands exclaimed, "Look, Ding Fengqiu has already obtained an iron medallion. The Heavenly Gate resistance fencing is indeed extraordinary. Not bad, he is strong enough. He killed the demonic beasts with one strike. In the next round, I will bet on him." The beast-taming Abad's Pei Xiaoxuan has also obtained an iron medallion. He controlled 7 or 8 rank 7 spirit beasts on his own, steamrolling the demonic beast. Zhang Zimo and Mu Xinya have obtained iron medallions as well. Their reputation as the two of the myriad fiend palace's 3 great experts is not in vain. The Holy Fire Manor's young manor lord has obtained an iron medallion as well. Leng Yun has been famous in the southern islands for a long time already. It is not strange that he obtained an iron medallion so early. Some of the young experts who had been famous for a while quickly obtained iron medallions and leapt out of the wrestling ring. From the very start, these people had demonstrated their strength. After these people killed several demonic beasts, the demonic beasts no longer dared attack them. They left to find weaker opponents. Those who were weaker fell to tragedy. The number of demonic beasts they faced increased. The situation had been difficult to begin with, but this made it worse. Several cultivators did not even have enough time to surrender before the demonic beasts tore them to shreds and ate them. It was a tragedy. Xiao Chen had faced 4 demonic beasts on his own without even drawing the lunar shadow saber. With his strong aura, none of the demonic beasts rushed into attack. Instead, the demonic beast focused on cultivators who struggled. The 2 flame wolves finally fell to Xiao Chen's fists. Xiao Chen tore apart the demonic beast's corpse. He discovered that he was pretty lucky. Of the 4 demonic beasts, 2 had iron medallions. However, no matter how many iron medallions Xiao Chen obtained, 1 was enough. Before he left, he discovered that Xia Xian and her junior sister were still fighting 7 or 8 demonic beasts. Xia Xian already grasped an iron medallion in her hands. Unfortunately, her junior sister had too little combat experience. Facing 2 demonic beasts simultaneously left the girl flustered. When 4 or 5 demonic beasts attacked together, it became even more dangerous. Xia Xian had no choice but to assist her junior sister. Because of Xiao Ru, the number of demonic beasts they faced increased. They had started with 4, but now fought 8. If this kept going on and the number of demonic beasts increased, Xia Xian might find it difficult to even protect herself. Xiao Chen hesitated for a moment and decided to help the girls. After all, when he had first arrived at Heavenly Spring Island, Xia Xian left a good impression on him. Furthermore, it was not something that would require much effort. If Xiao Chen could assist, he would. There were no disadvantages to making a friend. Bang! Xiao Chen pushed heavily off the ground and leapt into the air. With the aid of the blood flame shoes, he flashed through the air, smashing into a demonic beast that was about to attack Xia Xian with a roundhouse kick. Half of the demonic beast's head caved in. It fell to the ground, dead, shocking Xia Xian and Xiao Ru. At Xiao Chen's assistance, Xia Xian's face lit up in joy. She said, "Many thanks, Brother Xiao, for helping us." Xiao Chen nodded in response. He tossed over an iron medallion and said, "Take your junior sister away first. I will deal with these demonic beasts." When Xia Xian heard this, she refused and said, "No way. How can you deal with 7 demonic beasts alone? Even if you can, you will be forced to reveal your trump cards." "It doesn't matter. I have the advantage of speed. I am not afraid. Go." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and casually sent out a few sharp fist winds, attracting the 7 demonic beasts' attention. The pale Xiao Ru instantly sighed in relief. When she saw the demonic beasts focus on Xiao Chen, her expression became one of embarrassment. Xiao Ru had not expected Xiao Chen, whom she had slighted before, to have already obtained 2 iron medallions. Furthermore, he gave her one of them. Now, he helped lure away the other demonic beasts. After Xiao Chen led the demonic beasts a distance away, Xia Xian said to Xiao Ru, "More demonic beasts are already heading over here. Take the iron medallion and leave first. I will help him kill the demonic beast. Regardless of the situation, we cannot owe him too much." Xiao Ru understood that she would not be of much help. So, she took the iron medallion and quickly made her way out of the wrestling ring. The 7 demonic beasts continued to launch their attacks at Xiao Chen. He used his advantage of speed and dodged. As for some of the attacks that covered a large area, Xiao Chen simply took the hits. Such attacks did not inflict much damage, so he had no problem shrugging them off. Ka-ca. Just as Xiao Chen wanted to make a forceful breakthrough, a sharp sword light flashed and blood spurted. The head of a flame wolf flew into the air. Xia Xian had returned and landed beside Xiao Chen. Xia Xian said nothing. Her sword light danced as her figure darted like a butterfly. She moved naturally within the crowd of demonic beast. Xia Xian's sword chi was thick and imposing. With sword intent supporting it, its might was startling. It did not seem as delicate as her movement technique. Every time Xia Xian attacked, a strong demonic beast would suffer significant injuries. When their defenses weakened, she removed their limbs. This was probably her true strength. Without Xiao Ru holding her back, she would have been among those to obtain iron medallions first. Xiao Chen had no intention to leave immediately. He clenched his fists and relied on the strength of his physical body to battle head-on against the demonic beasts. As the two worked together, the 7 demonic beasts fell quickly. They both spent some time extracting the demonic cores and discovered that none of the 7 demonic beasts contained iron medallions. Xia Xian said, relieved, "Fortunately, you helped us and gave us an iron medallion. Otherwise, after expending so much effort to kill these demonic beasts, we would not have even obtained one." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "That is how luck works, nothing is guaranteed. Let's go." Shoo! Just at this moment, a man suddenly landed by their side. He smiled at the two and said, "Help me to hold them back for a while. I will take my leave first." The two's expression changed when they saw 10 odd demonic beasts rushing at them with surging auras. This fellow had used the two as a shield. The markings of Xiao Chen's blood flame shoes suddenly lit up. His speed instantly increased to Mach 4. He quickly arrived before the cultivator. As that man watched, astonished, Xiao Chen kicked him. He said expressionlessly, "Get back there." Xiao Chen simply moved too fast. That person had no time to react. When he got kicked in the chest, that person flew back into the encirclement of the demonic beasts. Sha Xian also took advantage of this opportunity to leap forward. The two quickly left the wrestling ring and arrived at the spectator stands prepared especially for the participants. Up on the spectator stands, there were already 100 people who had obtained an iron medallion. They looked at Xiao Chen, measuring him up, before shifting their gaze back to the wrestling ring. Within the wrestling ring, 60 or 70 people held on bitterly. The situation forced them to work together against the remaining 300-odd demonic beasts. Actually, all these people had to do was to jump out of the wrestling ring. Even if they did not have an iron medallion, they would not suffer any penalty. However, they would be giving up on their participation rights. Several dozen bodies lay scattered around the wrestling ring. Some of the demonic beasts ate these corpses under the watchful eyes of tens of thousands of people. Dying without a complete corpse and getting eaten by a demonic beast was the most tragic way for geniuses to fall. When Xiao Chen saw this, a ripple appeared in his calm heart. In this budding era of geniuses, there were as many geniuses as there were fish in a river, and more emerged as time passed. For the cultivators with startling talents, this was the best time to be alive. Only in this era could they find a stage for themselves to shine. If they succeeded, just like the Tianwu Emperor who founded the Tianwu dynasty, or the Thunder Emperor from 1,000 years ago, their names would be passed down through the ages. Even after 10,000 years, they would not be buried in the pages of history. This was also a cruel era. Be it a regular era, all the people present would have been peak geniuses of their time. However, now, geniuses that used to appear once in 100 years became ordinary. If they did not work hard, they would be eliminated from the race, losing their chance to shine on this stage. The owners of the bodies in the wrestling ring had thought of giving up. However, the moment they gave up, they would have been left behind in the dust. They would have become a mere spectator in this era of geniuses. To these proud geniuses, nothing would be worse than remaining a silent spectator. Xiao Chen clenched his right fist tightly as these thoughts flashed through in his mind. The era of geniuses has arrived. Since I already came to this world, I will not remain a spectator. 300-odd rank 7 demonic beasts were surrounding the remaining 60 or 70 cultivators. The battle could no longer be described as intense, it was just cruel. Soon after, another 10 cultivators obtained iron medallions and broke out of the encirclement of the demonic beasts, returning to the crowd. What made Xiao Chen somewhat surprised was that the cultivator who wanted to use Xiao Chen and Sha Xian as a shield was one of the 10. After that cultivator came up, he glared at Xiao Chen in passing, before joining the rest. Sha Xian said, "Don't underestimate him, he is the second disciple of the great Sha nation's Lamenting Valley's chief. His lamenting palm is very powerful. He probably did not want to expose his trump cards early, so he delayed obtaining an iron medallion." Xiao Chen nodded in agreement. In reality, he had concealed his strength as well. If he had drawn his saber, he was confident that he would have been one of the first 10 to obtain the iron medallion. After a long time, there were no more people obtaining iron medallions. Instead, the cultivators persevering on died one after another. Yao Yangyu shook his head and said something to the person beside him. After a while, 10 half-step martial monarchs descended into the wrestling ring. Their strong auras merged and suppressed the rank 7 demonic beasts. Hu Kai. In front of the strong aura, the previously insufferably arrogant rank 7 demonic beasts retreated in fear. Dong dong dong. The 10 half-step martial monarchs did not even make a move. They merely continued to walk forward. The demonic beasts returned to their cage once again. The remaining people knew that they no longer had a chance. They had extremely dispirited expressions on their faces. They all left using a different exit with ashen faces. This was no longer a stage belonging to them. Gao Yangyu withdrew his gaze. He looked at the crowd and smiled. This has exceeded my expectations. Unexpectedly, more than 100 people have passed. In the past, our rank a wrestling ring had never had such a pass rate before. We will officially start the fights in 2 hours. The fights will follow the house rules, and all of you can obtain prizes as well. Someone will come and tell you about this later. For now, go and register your iron medallion numbers. A manservant from the wrestling ring led the crowd to an underground room and started registering everyone. At the same time, someone roughly explained the prize system of the wrestling rings. Every victory obtained would gain them 300 medial grade spirit stones. It may not look like much, but if they could obtain consecutive victories, the rewards would increase. For 2 consecutive victories, they would receive 600 medial grade spirit stones. For the 3rd consecutive victory, it was 900, the 4th was 1,200, the 5th was 1,500. This required an individual to keep winning. If they could obtain 100 consecutive victories, the prize would be astronomical. Thus, it wasn't surprising that the wrestling ring could make many cultivators go wild for it. With the incentive of such big prizes, there would be no lack of intense battles. Initially, everyone did not feel moved by the prize. However, after they heard about the rule of consecutive victories, they all got excited. The prize was not a small sum, and no sector power would keep giving out medial grade spirit stones without limit. However, Xiao Chen felt that it was not that simple. If a cultivator with many consecutive victories appeared, the wrestling ring would probably end up losing a lot. After that, that person continued, "Ha. Ha. Don't think that it is so simple. So far, the record is 60 consecutive victory. Furthermore, that has not been achieved for more than 100 years already." The registration did not take much time. Since the fights would only begin after 2 hours, the crowd started to close their eyes and rest, recovering to their peak state. In a tall tower at the wrestling ring, Gao Yangyu held a stack of participants' information, handing them out to the surrounding old men. Look for a few people with some special characteristics. Just say that these people have a chance of breaking the record of 60 consecutive victories. Within 3 days, I want the bets for these people to reach 50 million medial grade spirit stones. The few old men seemed like they were placed in a difficult spot. They said, "City Lord Gao, will people believe such news?" Gao Yangyu laughed loudly and said, "Please look at the information first before you say anything. These are the peak geniuses of the various nations. This is the first round of the ancient desolate tower. Spread these news as well. I estimate we can also charge double for the tickets." After Gao Yangyu spoke, he continued on to a somewhat depressing piece of news as he sighed, "Unfortunately, I have only received the notice a week ago. Furthermore, I was not allowed to leak the news ahead of time. Otherwise, the amount of spirit stones we would have earned this time would have been enough for us to use for 10 years. After that, an old man excitedly brought a stack of information over. He said, "City Lord, how about this person? White-robed bladesman Xiao Chen. He had once defeated all the geniuses of the noble clans in the great Qin nation by himself. He even defeated the outer disciples of the Holy Land. Not too long ago, he managed to snatch away a peak high-rank Blood Demon's demon core from under the noses of 10 odd half-step martial monarchs. These are all good selling points. If we package them slightly, he could become our trump card. Yao Yangyu took the information and tossed it on the table without even looking at it. He said coldly, "Don't bother with this brat. No one is allowed to spread a word about him. Don't ask me why." The old men exchanged surprised looks. They did not understand what was going on. After 2 hours, everyone had completely recovered. They had properly stretched out and warmed themselves up in the fight earlier. Now, they were truly back to their peak state. Yao Yangyu did not appear again. Instead, an old man in gray robes brought the group back to the spectator stands. The old men said as he led them, "There will only be 10 matches on the first day, consider it as a warm-up. After that, in the next 5 days, there will be 18 matches per day. You will going up one by one according to your number." Xiao Chen looked at his iron medallion. The number 15 was engraved on it. It was either a high nor a low number. Dong, dong, dong. Right after they walked out of the tunnel, the sound of drumming excited their hearts. The rhythmical beats resounded across the arena like thunder. No one knew what this drum was made of. Its sound was loud and resonant. When the crowd heard it, they became excited, their fighting spirit surged and their heartbeat quickened. Xiao Chen looked up and discovered that the drum sounds came from the 4 towers surrounding the wrestling ring. The beating of these drums stirred up the atmosphere and the crowd became restless and excited. This is the peak quality heavenly tone war drums. I heard that it is made of rank 10,000-year-old flood dragon's skin and tendons. When one hears the sound of the drums, they would be able to bring out a sharp fighting spirit and explode forth with a strong combat prowess. The outstanding talents here were all very knowledgeable. They knew that a 1,000-year-old flood dragon was as strong as a peak martial sage. Furthermore, these beasts could adapt well to any environment and were difficult to find. The gray-robed old man smiled faintly. "These are not the heavenly tone war drums but the superior grade golden cadran war drums. They have the same function as the heavenly tone war drums but their effects are much weaker. You lot are not qualified for us to bring out the heavenly tone war drums yet, only the matches in the rank S wrestling ring are." The tempo of the drumming sped up. The old man did not explain any further. He simply said, "Who is number 1? Go up quickly." A young man in the crowd took a deep breath and leapt out of the spectator stands. The drumming immediately stopped. The young man cupped his hands and shouted to the crowd, "I am Yunping of the Great Chu Nation's brilliant amethyst sect." Tens of thousands of cultivators gazed down from the towering spectator stands. Countless perceptions were directed at Yunping. Some people withdrew their perception and shook their heads. Some seemed interested but decided not to fight in the end. Shoo. Not long later, a bald cultivator, with a sword on his back, leapt down from the southern spectator stands. When he landed, he did not make any sound. Clearly, this cultivator had a very good grasp of his strength. Xiao Chen sensed that this bald cultivator was a superior grade martial king. However, his aura was very dense and deep. This person probably cultivated a superior grade earth rank cultivation technique. He seemed quite strong. The two cupped their hands and exchanged greetings. Then, they immediately started to fight. At this point of time, the drum suddenly started to rumble in a low tone. After that, its rhythm changed according to the situation of the fight. Thus, it managed to grasp the heartstrings of the crowd and made the tens of thousands of cultivators feel extremely excited. The drum sound seemed to form a strange connection between the crowd and the fight, like they were part of the fight itself. The fight continued for 15 minutes. Yunping managed to win against the bald cultivator relatively easily. There was nothing really special about this fight. After the bald cultivator lost, He walked over towards Xiao Chen's side in a miserable manner. Then, he handed over 150 medial grade spirit stones to the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed old man explained, the challenger has to pay half the spirit stones his opponent wins. However, if he had won, he would have been able to gain 300 medial grade spirit stones. The matches continued. Yun Ping managed to gain 9 consecutive wins. His reward had already reached 2,700 medial grade spirit stones, which was a rather large amount. If Yun Ping won another match, he would have ended the day perfectly. At the same time, he would be able to gain 3,000 medial grade spirit stones. After the 9th match ended, another silhouette impatiently jumped into the wrestling ring. This person did not control his strength at all. When that person landed, the ground trembled, causing a large cloud of dust to fly up. It looked very ostentatious. The last challenger had a sword at his waist and a sinister look on his face. He smiled as he said, Yun Ping, right. Your 3,000 medial grade spirit stones are mine. Remember my name, Xiao Yang. Yun Ping mocked, do you think that it is possible? Dong. The drums rang out. The two started to fight intensively. The clashing weapons created countless sparks in the air. Xia Xian said softly, this Yun Ping's consecutive wins are probably going to come to an end. The battle had just begun, yet, Xia Xian made such an conclusion so quickly. Xiao Chen asked suspiciously, how so? Xia Xian smiled gently and explained, I have come to Wrestling City a few times before. This Xiao Yang is quite famous here. He loves to make his move when his opponent had just gained 9 consecutive victories, causing them to lose. Others gave him the nickname of Ten-Win Terminator. Ten-Win Terminator. Unexpectedly, this person had such a nickname. Xiao Chen laughed hoarsely, without having some strength, it would be difficult to obtain such a nickname. Xia Xian nodded and said, he had been a superior grade martial king for a long time. His comprehension of sword techniques is no lesser than that of any ordinary genius. However, his trump card is the very odd state he had comprehended. It seems similar to the Lamenting Valley state. It can affect the emotions of others. A state that affects the emotions of others. This was the first time Xiao Chen heard of such a thing. He could not help but feel very interested, so he paid close attention to the battlefield. While the two spoke, the people in the wrestling ring had already exchanged several dozen moves. Yun Ping could tell that his opponent was strong. He also knew that he had exhausted a lot of his essence after fighting 9 consecutive battles. He could not afford to drag out the match, so all his moves were killing moves. He wanted to end the battle early. However, Xiao Yang was very relaxed. He looked like a monkey, moving around randomly. He opted against clashing head-on with Yun Ping, but rather for exhausting his spirit and patience. Yun Ping tried to catch his opponent and force him into a head-on battle several times already. However, Xiao Yang managed to nimbly escape. Xiao Chen was pondering over Xiao Yang's movement technique. He thought to himself, what an exquisite movement technique. It seems like he is able to sense his opponent's attacks from any part of his body. However, it is useless against my Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art. In front of absolute speed, no amount of tricks will work. It's time to end this. Suddenly, Xiao Yang, who had been constantly dodging, came to a halt. The look in his eyes became very sharp as he thrust his sword forward. The sword hummed, leaving behind a long trail of fiery red light in the air. The trail was an extremely thick fire-attributed essence. However, Yun Ping did not panic. Instead, he laughed and said, you are seeking your own death. I have been waiting for you for very long already. You are the one that will be losing. Cha. Cha. Just as Yun Ping was about to execute his powerful killing move, he suddenly became flustered and his heart filled with fear. When he tried looking into his opponent's eyes, he felt even more horrified. There was no reason for his horror, so Yun Ping's mental state became very chaotic. Originally, he could have executed his killing attack in 3 moves. However now, he was not able to execute it even after a long time. Compared to the confused Yun Ping, Xiao Yang's aura became even more dense. Xiao Yang used his sword to send his opponent's weapon flying. Then, the sword with surging fire-attributed essence exploded out towards Yun Ping's chest. Bang! A bloody wound appeared on Yun Ping's chest. Blood dripped out from Yun Ping's mouth as he fell to the ground. A cold sword appeared next to his neck. Yun Ping felt shocked. He could not accept such an end. However, Xiao Yang laughed and said, "I told you that your consecutive wins will come to an end. Come again tomorrow and pray that you won't run into me again." Xiao Yang sheathed his sword and walked over to the gray-robed old man. He received 3,000 medial-grade spirit stones from the old man. Before he left, he unconsciously glanced at Xiao Chen. When Xiao Chen met that gaze, he felt that it was somewhat strange. It felt very hostile. Sha Xian thought something was awry and asked, "This person seemed to be targeting you. Did you offend him before, in the past?" Xiao Chen said, "I'm not sure. However, I am not afraid. I now understand what is going on with his state already." Aside from Xiao Yang's odd state, the fellow's strength was actually not much better than Yun Ping's. However, this happened to be the last fight for Yun Ping today. He felt anxious and wanted to finish his opponent in 1 move, but he ended up getting led by the nose by his opponent. Eventually, when Yun Ping became extremely frustrated, his opponent suddenly made his move. Then, he got struck by the unexpected attack, so his loss was not undeserved. Dong! 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 The drums continued to resound. The battles of number 1 to 14 proceeded on quickly. There were a few outstanding fights in the following battles. Most of the participants who came out won at least half their fights. However, no one achieved 10 consecutive victories. If they did not lose somewhere in the middle, they would be defeated in the final fight, when their mental state wavered. Who is number 15? Go up quickly. Finally, it was Xiao Chen's turn. He pushed off the ground gently and firmly landed onto the wrestling ring. Xiao Chen of the Great Qin Nation, please provide me with your guidance. Xiao Chen cupped his hands respectfully and greeted the surrounding spectators. Shoo! The moment Xiao Chen spoke, someone quickly descended onto the wrestling ring. When he landed, the ground trembled. It was very ostentatious. It was the 10-win Terminator, Xiao Yang, who had defeated Yun Ping earlier. Xiao Yang measured up Xiao Chen with his eyes. He noticed that Xiao Chen did not carry a weapon but wore a pair of black gloves instead. His lips curled up into a faint smile and he said, "Bare-handed. That's fine too, I have not fought someone like that for a long time already. I, Xiao Yang, will end you today." Strange, why did Xiao Yang go down already? It is very rare for him to make his move on the first match. It has been many years since Xiao Yang made his move on the first match. How rare. Indeed, why did he do this? 300 medial grade spirit stones probably cannot move him either. This fellow has probably offended Xiao Yang. He is going to be in for a bad time. He will receive a big blow to his morale after being defeated in the first round. The cultivators who frequently came to Wrestling City to spectate were all very familiar with Xiao Yang. They could not understand why he rushed down on the first fight. On the top floor, in a tower behind the wrestling ring, Gao Yangyu stared blankly at the distant Xiao Chen. He muttered, "Brat, don't blame me for being vicious. If you need to blame someone, blame the fact that you've embarrassed Li Xiuju. That old fellow is famous for being very narrow-minded." An old man at the side could not help but say, City Lord Gao, are we really going to make this brat lose for all 100 matches? Gao Yangyu shrugged and said, Li Xiuju gave the instructions, what do you expect me to do? Don't forget, he is the one in charge of collecting taxes for the Heavenly Extermination Union. It would have been fine if he had offended someone else. Too bad this brat is unlucky. Just do as I say. The old man nodded lightly, but he shook his head in his heart, smiling bitterly. Losing 100 matches, that would be an unprecedented occurrence that will probably never happen again. After such a humiliation, the youth's mind would probably be crippled for life. This Li Xiuju was too vicious. He actually thought of such a devious plan. Looking at Xiao Yang's sinister expression, Xiao Chen's heart did not waver. After entering the wrestling ring, no matter who his opponent was or why he was there, he could only be one thing to Xiao Chen, an enemy. There was no need to think about anything, he just needed to knock him out. Sorry, given my status, it is somewhat unfair to make a move on you. However, someone asked me to help with this, so don't blame me. After Xiao Yang spoke, he watched Xiao Chen closely, waiting for his reaction. He wanted to see the calm young man's expression change. However, he was bound to be disappointed. From the very start, Xiao Chen's mental state did not fluctuate at all. His expression remained incredibly calm, like he did not care about his opponent at all. Xiao Chen said indifferently, there is no need for you to apologize. You do not qualify to apologize to me like this either. Ha ha. Interesting. Xiao Yang's lips curled up slightly and he said, I want to see what kind of ability you have to say such bold words. Dong. 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 The drums that had been silent for a long time finally rang out once again, making everyone feel excited. Now that Xiao Chen was in the wrestling ring, he could feel the might of the Golden Cauldron war drums. The sound of the drums rang beside his head, and his blood started to surge. Xiao Chen's momentum began to rise naturally and continuously, as if he was in an ancient battlefield. He felt impassioned and wanted to give his all in this fight. However, if Xiao Chen did that, he would fall for the wrestling ring's tricks. The purpose of the Golden Cauldron war drums was to make the cultivators put in their all in every match, using their full power without realizing it. This would result in the cultivators exhausting their strength for no good reason in every match. After a few matches, their essence would be overly exhausted and they would not be able to continue their streak of victories. Xiao Chen's spiritual sense turned into an ancient bell in his sea of consciousness. It rang with a long drawn-out chime, thoroughly calming him down thoroughly. Hu Kai. Even after observing for a long time, Xiao Yang still could not find Xiao Chen's weak point. He gently stepped forward and drew his sword. He had no choice but to make the first move. Xiao Chen did not retreat and stepped forward to welcome him. He punched, sending out some pure energy to welcome Xiao Yang's sword. Bang! Bang! The fist wind and the sword chi clashed unendingly, exploding in the air. Xiao Yang moved past the shock waves generated by the explosions and lounged towards Xiao Chen's face. Xiao Chen tilted his head a little and dodged the sword. As the sword slid past his face, he used his right fingers to flick the sword heavily. Boom! A huge amount of force came from his fingers, traveling down the sword and making it tremble. Xiao Yang felt like the sword was trying to break out of his hands. He could not help but follow the direction his sword was moving in. What a strong force! Xiao Yang clearly did not expect Xiao Chen to be so strong. He did not seem like an inferior grade martial king. As Xiao Yang had been caught off guard, he was at a disadvantage. However, panic did not appear on his face. Xiao Chen calculated the timing of Xiao Yang's landing. He shouted a war cry at the top of his lungs, and clenching his right hand into a fist, he punched. Xiao Yang, however, maintained his relaxed expression. He did not seem overly astonished. He executed the strange movement technique again, and he sensed the direction of Xiao Chen's attack the moment he moved. He then pushed off the ground and quickly retreated in the opposite direction. His movement technique seemed to be able to predict the future. When he fought with Yun Ping, he made his opponent unable to unleash killing moves several times. Now, Xiaoyang used this movement technique on Xiao Chen, dodging his attacks in advance. Xiao Chen stopped and stored up some power in his fist. He looked at the retreating Xiaoyang and smiled. "You think you can run? Blood Flame Shoes, activate." Shoo. Xiao Chen's speed instantly increased to Mach 3.5. Just as Xiaoyang managed to regain his footing, an intense fist wind flew towards him, accompanied by the roars of a tiger and a dragon. Retreat. Xiaoyang was startled. He executed his strange movement technique. Once again, he perfectly predicted Xiao Chen's direction of attack. Then, he quickly dodged in the opposite direction. However, Xiao Chen stopped and changed his direction, sending another attack again. Boom, boom, boom. Punches rained down from both of Xiao Chen's fists amidst roars of tigers and dragons. The torrent of fist winds continuously pushed Xiaoyang back. Xiaoyang was executing the strange movement technique to its peak. However, no matter what he did, he could not shake off Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen's sharp fist wind followed up after every step he took. Xiao Yang's sword danced around and a fiery light flashed. Although he managed to parry part of the energy coming from the fist wind, its remnants ruthlessly struck his body. As the damage continued to accumulate, they could no longer be belittled. When the crowd in the spectator stand saw this scene, a look of astonishment flashed in their eyes. They had not expected this. The scene they expected, where Xiaoyang easily killed his opponent, had not occurred. Instead, a nameless brat was suppressing the 10-win Terminator. Scram. Xiaoyang finally understood his movement technique was useless before Xiao Chen. Thus, his sword lit up with a fiery light and clashed with Xiao Chen's fist wind. When Xiaoyang struck, he took the strength of Xiao Chen's fist wind into account. If Xiao Chen decided to take it head-on, he had complete confidence that he could make Xiao Chen suffer a big loss. Xiao Chen said indifferently, "You should be the one scramming." His purple chi whirlpool spun quickly. Surging essence traveled via his broadened meridians and poured into his right fist. Boom. In that instant Xiao Chen's essence and vital chi merged, and an intense fist wind exploded forth from his hand. The fist wind ripped through the air, creating small tornadoes. Xiao Chen's punch instantly reached 350,000 kilograms of force. Bang! 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 The sudden increase in force far exceeded Xiaoyang's expectations. Xiao Chen scattered the fiery red essence on his sword, making his move collapse. Xiao Chen's aura seemed to be set ablaze as a tiger and a dragon spiraled around him. The roars from the two animals continued without stopping. His fist danced around and he sent out hundreds of punches in an instant. Bang! Xiaoyang's protective essence could not bear it anymore, and the strong force caused it to shatter. Xiao Chen smiled coldly. He used one fist to knock away the sword light his opponent sent over. Then, he used his other fist to strike his opponent's chest. Xiaoyang vomited a mouthful of blood. As the blood flew into the air, his face became ghastly pale. "Damn it! State of fear," Xiaoyang sinisterly said while wiping off the blood on the corner of his mouth. Woo! Woo! Xiaoyang emitted a strange qi field that soon encased Xiao Chen within it. When Xiaoyang felt that Xiao Chen got completely enveloped by his qi field, a cocky expression appeared on his face. As long as one entered this qi field, Xiaoyang had the confidence of defeating even a peak superior grade martial king. Even if Xiao Chen cultivated a heaven-ranked cultivation technique and had surging essence, he thought he could easily defeat this inferior-grade martial king. Xiao Chen felt a strange sponge-like energy trying to enter his mind. However, the ancient bell formed by his spiritual sense in his sea of consciousness rang gently and the spongy energy directly shattered. Xiao Chen did not feel anything, it was completely useless against him. Indeed, it is as I have guessed. States that affect the emotions involve mental energy. Given that Xiao Chen's mental energy was stronger than that of a martial monarch's, Xiao Yang's state of fear was useless against him. The drums sounded without rest, grasping the rhythm of the battle. It was as if they felt that the fight had reached its most intense moment. The drummer seemed to have used all his strength. Every beat of the drum struck deep into the hearts of the crowd. The crowd's hearts started to all beat at the same tempo, making them feel extremely anxious. Time for you to lose. Xiao Yang pushed off the ground and his body shot forward. Sparks danced around his sword and soon turned into a blazing flame. Xiao Chen's expression remained calm. Seeing Xiao Yang rush forward with his full power, he quickly found the weak point of his move. Bang! When Xiao Yang was only 3 meters away from Xiao Chen kicked calmly, and his foot accurately struck his opponent's wrist. Xiao Yang's wrist bone broke and his sword fell. The surging fire-attributed essence immediately turned into countless sparks and scattered all around the two. Xiao Chen, however, did not retract his right foot after kicking out. He used the remaining momentum to slide downwards and kicked Xiao Yang's chin with a hook kick. Xiao Yang spurted another mouthful of blood. This kick made him flip around and fall. Impossible. How can you resist the state of fear? You must have cheated. Xiao Yang shouted maniacally, while trying to prop his body up on his hands. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with him. He simply kicked him 100 meters away, making him land on the ground miserably. The drums stopped. The end of the match was clear. Bang! Up in the tower, Yao Yangyu had been monitoring the situation very closely. When he saw the result, he raged and violently smacked the wooden table in front of him. Damn it! How did it turn out like this? Normally, he can even defeat peak superior grade martial kings. Now, he can't even deal with an insignificant inferior grade martial king. The old man beside muttered, the two biggest killing moves of Xiao Yang, the butterfly steps and the state of fear were ineffective against his fellow. It is not strange that he has been defeated. After all, aside from these 2 points, Xiao Yang's strength is only equivalent to a regular superior grade martial king. Gao Yangyu said, I don't care what arrangements you make, but since we cannot make him lose all 100 matches, we must at least make him lose more than 40 matches. Otherwise, I will not be able to give an account to Li Xiuju. Originally, Gao Yangyu's intended to send Xiao Yang first so he could severely injure Xiao Chen. After he lost a good portion of his strength, they could have made Xiao Chen lose 10 times in a row easily. However, the situation now became different from what Gao Yangyu expected. Xiao Chen did not get injured at all and he easily defeated Xiao Yang. Thus, his plan to make Xiao Chen lose 100 times was as good as gone. The old man clearly felt that Xiao Chen was hard to deal with. When he heard Gao Yangyu's angry words, he felt an immense pressure arise in his heart. City Lord Gao, how about this? Let's not send out any of our people in today's 10 matches. Let him win 10 matches today. After the elders thoroughly analyze his strength, we can send in someone that can counter him. What do you think? The old man suggested. Gao Yangyu's expression was sullen. He thought for a while and said, we will do as you say then. However, we cannot fall through on the others. Advertise those that should be advertised. No matter what, earning money is the most important. Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon. Xiao Chen crisscrossed his arms and formed a strong qi wall. A tiger and a dragon wrapped around his body, blocking his opponent's strong strike. Dragon hisses, tiger roars. Xiao Chen used the energy stored up by the crouching tiger hidden dragon and raised the might of the dragon hisses, tiger roars to its peak. When the fierce punches landed on his opponent, the latter vomited some more blood and collapsed in defeat. Even though the drums had stopped, the hearts of the crowds remained excited. What a great fellow! This is his 9th victory already. After defeating Xiao Yang, he seems to become stronger and stronger. There are no signs of him weakening. He unexpectedly cultivates both his physical body and essence. He seems to grow stronger with each match. I can't make out what is his strongest state. Originally, I thought that Xiao Yang has been defeated because he was careless. From the looks of this, his defeat was not undeserved. After Xiao Chen defeated Xiao Yang, his aura flourished, and he won the next 8 battles. He stirred up the excitement of the crowd. The emotions of the crowd were heavily influenced by the resounding drums, so they continuously discussed Xiao Chen. He might be the first person to obtain 10 consecutive victories today. He is much stronger than the first competitor, Yun Ping. Just wait and see who will go up next. After continuously fighting in the wrestling ring, Xiao Chen's fighting spirit became fully incited. However, his eyes remained calm. Even though the drums resounded loudly, Xiao Chen's mental state did not change. He used the exact amount of strength he needed. 1 minute later, Xiao Chen's 10th challenger finally came out. He was a cultivator who specialized in bare-handed combat. He was a peak superior grade martial king. However, his cultivation technique did not seem to be very good. Although his cultivation realm was high, his aura did not seem to be strong. He was probably only cultivating a medial grade earth-ranked cultivation technique. Great martial techniques but poor cultivation technique. This was a very common problem throughout the continent. Even the strong sect and clans only had a few superior grade earth-ranked cultivation techniques. Peak earth-ranked cultivation techniques were even more sparse. As for heaven-ranked cultivation techniques, only a few peak sects had them. They were considered treasures of the sect and were passed down from generation to generation. I am Beiming Feng. Please provide me with guidance. The final challenger came forward, cupped his hands, and reported his name. After that, the sound of drums started to ring out and the two started fighting. Bang! 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 The two fought bare-handed, so this fight became very intense. They exchanged countless punches and kicks, and clashed head-on with every move they made. However, Beiming Feng's bare-handed techniques were more exquisite. The coordination between his hands and feet was better. Soon, Xiao Chen had already received several blows from his opponent. However, Xiao Chen only barely managed to land half the number of his opponent's attacks. The Great Dragon Tiger Fist was only a medial grade earth-ranked martial technique. It was not at the peak of its class. Thus, when running into an expert of bare-handed combat, such a result was understandable. If Xiao Chen did not have the pair of black gloves, which increased his attack speed, he might have been in an even more miserable state. However, Xiao Chen excelled at physical defense. His vital qi and essence far surpassed his opponent's. The strength of one of his punches was equivalent to 5 or 6 of his opponent's. When Xiao Chen merged his vital qi and essence, he started to increasingly force his opponent back. After the two exchanged hundreds of moves like this, Beiming Feng's complexion started to turn pale, and blood trickled out of the corner of his lips. Although Xiao Chen was not at ease, it was still something within the boundaries of what he could bear. After the baptism of a heaven-ranked body-tempering cultivation technique, his blood, bones, flesh, and meridians became significantly stronger. Let's stop the fight, I admit defeat. After exchanging 200 more moves, Beiming Feng's complexion became so pale that he seemed completely drained of blood. His qi and blood were surging. If he continued fighting, he would end up with serious internal injuries. Xiao Chen withdrew his hands and backed off, not attacking anymore. I am not weaker than you just have a better cultivation technique and a stronger physical body. If we had similar conditions, I would have been able to defeat even 10 of you easily. Bei Mingfeng felt extremely dissatisfied as he wiped the blood off the corner of his lips. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "A victory is a victory and a defeat is a defeat. There is no need for so many excuses." Xiao Chen felt that the other party's words were hilarious. How can his accomplishments in his physical body be easily described in one sentence? Before Xiao Chen turned 16, he could not even condense a martial spirit. All the spiritual energy he absorbed infused into his bones and flesh. This had built a very good foundation for his body. However, because of that, he had suffered nearly 6 years of mockery. In the underground world of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Xiao Chen had received a palm strike from Song Ke that nearly destroyed his martial spirit. After that, Xiao Chen obtained an earth-ranked body tempering cultivation technique and stepped through the threshold of cultivating the body. Every time he searched for body-tempering spirit herbs, he had to face all sorts of dangers. After he obtained the heaven-ranked body-tempering cultivation technique, he had to endure 3 kinds of inhumane torment. However, he managed to pull through all the sufferings. Xiao Chen's path on the road of cultivating his body had been filled with thorns. Each and every step had been very arduous. Xiao Chen had relied on his strong willpower to be able to endure it to this point. It was definitely not as simple as his opponent had put it, that was merely complete nonsense. Bei Mingfeng tossed over a box of spirit stones and smiled as though he did not care. He said, "Ha ha. It is as you said, there is no use for the losers to find excuses. However, your good days are coming to an end tomorrow. Take the spirit stones, I can't be bothered to go over." Xiao Chen remembered his opponent's words and did not say anything else. He picked up the spirit stones and walked back to the spectator stands. Although Xiao Chen suspected that there was someone targeting him, and that Xiao Yang and Bei Mingfeng had been sent out by that person, he knew he would not obtain any answers if he asked the two about it. So, there was no need to say anything else. The gray-robed old man saw the returning Xiao Chen and handed the remaining 1,500 medial-grade spirit stones to him. He smiled and said, "Little brother, congratulations. You are the first to obtain 10 consecutive victories." Xiao Chen received the spirit stones and gave his thanks. Then, he moved to the back of the crowd. Su. As Xiao Chen walked back, he could clearly feel countless gazes trying to measure him up. Furthermore, many people used their perceptions to try and figure out his strength. Strange, he is clearly only an inferior grade martial king. Why is he so ridiculously strong? Doubtful thoughts appeared in the minds of the outstanding talents from the various nations as they withdrew their perceptions. The strength Xiao Chen demonstrated had already aroused the attention of the others. He was definitely a strong competitor for entering the ancient desolate tower. The others could not help but pay more attention to Xiao Chen. Xia Xian, Zhang Zimo, and Mu Xinya all came forward one after the other to offer their congratulations. The matches continued on for a long time, but no one obtained 10 consecutive victories. Only when the beast-taming Abad's Pei Xiaoshuan's turn arrived, did the second person with 10 consecutive wins appear. Furthermore, Pei Xiaoshuan gained 10 consecutive victories with even easier than Xiao Chen did, thus attracting the attention of the crowd. In every match, Pei Xiaoshuan would summon out 7 or 8 high-rank spirit beasts. He did not have to put in any personal effort and merely hid behind as he controlled the spirit beasts to attack his opponents. Pei Xiaoxuan obtained every victory with extreme ease, without exhausting himself at all. After Pei Xiaoxuan, Dong Fengqiu, Zhang Zimo, and Mu Xinya obtained 10 consecutive victories as well. This pushed the crowd's excitement to the peak. These people seemed stronger than the one that came before, each victory seemed more elegant than the last. They had completely suppressed Xiao Chen's splendor. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. This way, he could attract minimal attention and win using the least amount of effort. That, however, was good enough for Xiao Chen. The matches of more than 100 people continued until the sky turned dark. A total of 7 people obtained 10 consecutive victories. They were Xiao Chen, Zhang Zimo, Ding Fengqiu, Mu Xinya, Pei Xiaoxuan, Xia Xian, and the Holy Fire Manor's Leng Yun, who Xiao Chen tried to avoid. However, Leng Yun neither got involved in Xiao Chen's conflict with Qin Pengyu nor paid any special attention to Xiao Chen. So, Xiao Chen was not too concerned about him. Not far away from the wrestling ring, there were some small exquisite courtyards. The contestants were to stay there for the next 5 days. After darkness fell, and the sky filled with sparkling stars, Xiao Chen sat cross-legged in his courtyard, and started dealing with all the hidden injuries he had accumulated in today's fight. After every fight, no matter how strong a cultivator was, there would always be some amount of hidden damage. If left unattended, over a long time, it would turn into a hidden disease. By then, it would be extremely difficult to deal with. Xiao Chen had already nurtured this good habit long ago. He made sure to clear off any hidden damage after every big fight. 1 hour later, Xiao Chen opened his eyes. Under the nourishment of his essence, all the hidden damage in his body had recovered. Xiao Chen was not in a rush to sleep, he still had many things to do. He slowly reviewed all the fights that had happened during the day. As Xiao Chen recalled the fights, he started to practice some moves in the room to see where was he still lacking. Thus, if he met the same situation again, he would be better prepared. My physical body may be strong, but I am still lacking in bare-handed techniques. The medial grade Earth-ranked Great Dragon Tiger Fist can no longer keep up. In the end, Xiao Chen came to this conclusion. The final fight with Bei Mingfeng was the best proof. When facing a cultivator who specialized in bare-handed techniques, Xiao Chen was at a disadvantage in terms of exquisiteness of technique. If it were not for his strong physical body, he might have been forced to draw his saber. Xiao Chen said to himself, "After this is over, I have to go find a peak Earth-ranked fist technique to practice." By the time he came to this conclusion, it was already very late, so Xiao Chen did not continue thinking. He took out 2 medial-grade spirit stones and entered a state of cultivation holding them in his hands. The next morning, Xiao Chen got up very early. The moment he opened the doors and entered the yard, he saw Xia Xian and her junior sister. After they greeted each other, the 3 walked towards the wrestling ring together. Along the way, Xiao Ru was quite dispirited, she only won 3 matches yesterday. Xiao Ru did not have much combat experience, and this proved to be a fatal flaw, especially so when she met cultivators with extremely dense killing chi. Even before they fought, she already cowered. However, no one could help her. If she could bear through all these, then she would improve very quickly in the wrestling ring. If she could not, a shadow of defeat would linger in her heart. In the future, she would most likely find it difficult to improve. Whether this experience would become a disaster or a blessing depended only on herself. "Xiao Chen, I have heard some news about you," Xia Xian suddenly said as they were about to enter the wrestling ring. Xiao Chen stopped walking and said, "Is it about someone taking special care of me in the wrestling ring?" Xia Xian nodded. She looked somewhat worried as she said, "Li Xiuju is famous for being vengeful throughout the Heavenly Extermination Union. He is very narrow-minded. Back then, When you embarrassed him in front of everyone, he left some instructions to Gao Yangyu. This was exactly as Xiao Chen guessed. It was all Li Xiuju's doing, thank you. However, half-step martial monarchs cannot participate in the rank A wrestling ring. I should have no problems obtaining 60 victories. Xia Xian shook her head and said, it is not as simple as you think. The wrestling ring has a group of strong cultivators below half-step martial monarchs who they keep in reserve to prevent people from getting too many consecutive victories. Although these people are not half-step martial monarchs, they all have their own trump cards. They could be like the Xiao Yang you faced, or some old monsters who have lived for more than 100 years and are basically unrivaled below half-step martial monarchs. Xia Xian continued, think about it, if Gao Yangyu wants to target you, all he has to do is to send someone to severely injure you on the first match of each day. Once you are injured, the remaining 10 odd matches would be easy to deal with. Seeing that Xiao Chen did not seem concerned, Xiao Ru asked, my senior sister said so much to you already, why do you not look worried at all? Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and somewhat helplessly, I am worried. However, there is no need to express that on my face. Furthermore, there is no use worrying about it. When there is a flood, we will build a dam. When there are soldiers attacking, we will defend with an army. Anyway, I must obtain one of the 20 spots for entering the ancient desolate tower. No one can stop me. TL note. When there is a flood, we will build a dam. When there are soldiers attacking, we will defend with an army. This is a Chinese idiom for adopting measures appropriate to the situation. Thank you for your reminder, let's go in. Xia Xian sighed to herself. It was indeed as Xiao Chen said. What was the point of worrying, if that could not solve the problem? In the spectator stands specially prepared for the contestants, the others had already arrived. Xiao Chen found a desolate corner and sat down, ignoring the gazes of the people around. He was sitting cross-legged and started to cultivate the firmament body tempering art's 4th layer. Hugging Buddha's foot at the last minute, huh? Will that be of any use? Pei Xiaoxuan mocked when he saw this scene. TL note. Hugging Buddha's foot at the last minute. This means seeking a miracle by means of frantic, last-minute effort. The others shook their heads as well, thinking the same as Pei Xiaoxuan. What can Xiao Chen do in the time? It would have been better for him to carefully observe the strengths of some of the opponents. Even Zhang Zimo and Ding Fengqiu did not think this was necessary, as this would only be of use if he was trying to break through cultivation realms. However, Xiao Chen was not doing that. Furthermore, after becoming a martial king, it would no longer be possible to easily advance at any time he wanted. There were many geniuses who were stuck without making breakthroughs for more than half a year at this stage. After watching the matches from yesterday, Xiao Chen already had a rough idea of everyone's strength. If Xia Xian had not said anything, Xiao Chen might have continued watching for another day. However, he now felt a sense of danger. Xiao Chen would not choose to fight a battle that he had no confidence in. So, he only after breaking through the firmament body tempering art's 4th layer would he become fully confident in getting 60 victories. Hence, from that point on, Xiao Chen did not have any time to waste. There was no need to care about what the others thought. Dong! 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 Despite the loud drumming, Xiao Chen's calm mind did not get affected. He focused on cultivating the firmament body tempering art's 4th layer. Xiao Chen only sent out a strand of spiritual sense to watch the gray-robed old man. He still focused on cultivating, but he could not forget about the matches. As Xiao Chen circulated his vital qi, hot steam came out from the top of his head. The steam was the excess energy that was released after the vital qi circulated. Time slowly went by. Xiao Chen ignored the clamor and liveness on the crowd. It was as though he was in a mountain forest. He was completely at peace. Number 15. Go up quickly. After an unknown period of time, Xiao Chen's strand of spiritual sense heard the old man's voice. So, he opened his eyes. The gray-robed old man looked calmly at Xiao Chen. A strange look flashed in his eyes, as if he wanted to say something. However, he did not say anything in the end. When Xiao Chen descended onto the wrestling ring, he cupped his hand to the crowd around him and said, "I am Xiao Chen from the Great Qin Nation. Please show me your guidance." Up in the tall tower in the distance, Gao Yangyu expressionally watched as Xiao Chen entered the wrestling ring. He said to the old man beside him, "How is that person you spoke of like? Is he confident in severely injuring him in the first match?" Jiao do chong ne de gui ding, suo yu ren de yi tian ji ne ji nang lian shu shang chong liang si. According to the rules of the wrestling ring, everyone could take part in the match only twice a day. Although Gao Yangyu had hired a lot of experts, there were even more contestants. Furthermore, each contestant had to undergo 18 matches per day. It was not possible for him to use all the hired experts on Xiao Chen. Hence, the first match was the most crucial one. As long as Xiao Chen got severely injured in the first match, Gao Yangyu did not have to waste a lot of resources in the latter matches. That was because the crowd came to obtain spirit stones as well, so they would step up instead. There would be no problem for them to defeat a severely injured Xiao Chen. If managed properly, Xiao Chen would lose 18 matches in a row per day. In 2.5 days, the matter would be completely dealt with. The old man knew how anxious and angry Gao Yangyu was. He patted his chest and guaranteed, "City Lord, rest assured. The elders have analyzed yesterday's 10 matches. This person may be strong, and the defense of his physical body may be extraordinary, but his techniques are lacking. As long as we can find someone whose physical body is stronger than him, we can suppress him easily." Gao Yangyu said sullenly, "Can you guarantee that?" The old man said confidently, "There will be absolutely no problems. If he does not end up severely injured, City Lord, you can severely injure me. That person's physical body is on another level compared to Xiao Chen's." When Gao Yangyu heard this, he finally relaxed. When Xiao Chen entered the stage, the previously somewhat calm spectator stands became very noisy as everyone started chatting with each other. Although the limelight had been stolen by Zhang Zimo and the others, Xiao Chen's performance was the first one that got everyone excited. Thus, everyone was still filled with anticipation. Bang! After a while, a stout man carrying a huge axe jumped down from the stands. There were no fluctuations of essence as he moved. Clearly, he was a rarely seen body cultivator. Bang! The stout man loudly landed on the ground and dust filled the air. When Xiao Chen peered through the dust, he saw that person's appearance clearly. He could not help but reveal a smile. "Bai Lixi, you actually still dare appear before me. You are really courageous."